Okay, in this video I want to concentrate on just the header section. So what I want to do here is I want to add a nice little logo here on the left hand side of the header, and then I'm going to put some text on the right hand side. So one of the things you have to do a lot of times is you're going to go out and find some images that you want to utilize for your project. Now there's a variety of different stock photo libraries out there that you can actually go in and utilize, and you can go out online and find some free downloads as well. Now what I want to do here is I'm going to open up this image I'm going to use for my logo in Photoshop. And this is a logo that's a simple PNG logo, and you can see that this here has transparent background and so forth. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some manipulation to this to make sure it fits exactly in the area that I'm going to work with. So before I do so, what I need to do is I need to double check on the height and width I'm working with. Now since I'm working with the header is 960 across by 150 in height. So I really need to know that, because I cannot have an image fit inside there that is 1000 pixels in width. It just won't fit. It will cause an issue with your layout. And so if your height is set to 150, then you want to make sure your image is no higher than 150. So in Photoshop I want to go in and I'm just going to work with the image size command here to double check. And here I want to make sure the unit dimensions are in pixels. So if it's in inches, make sure you go to pixels, because when we're working with a website we work with pixel dimensions. As you can see here, the height is set to 273. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust that and take it down to 150. Because there's a link on, this should automatically change the width to be proportional. So when I'm more of a vertical website, when I'm creating vertical, I'm more concerned about the height fitting, not as much as the width. It's more about the height on this aspect. And so when I click OK, I'm going to go up and I'm going to do a file save as. Now you need to make sure that you're saving this in the site folders and in the folder called images that you created. If it goes somewhere else, make sure you check it out and make sure you know which way you're going, because if you took this image from another folder, you might be saving it into that folder, and it always remembers the last place where you saved it in Photoshop. So if you were working on another assignment, if you're working with another project and you saved your image in a different folder, it's going to go back to that. So make sure you look at the right folder, and you have to save it in the images folder of your site folder. I'm going to replace it because I already have it there. I'm going to click OK. Now in Dreamweaver, one of the things you're going to see here, it's automatically going to show up in the images folder. So when you add it there and you're working with Photoshop, you add it and save it to the image, it will automatically add there. If it doesn't show automatically, click on the refresh button here and it will add it in to that list. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I click in the header section. You can see down here in my code I also have a black line in between the header. So I'm going to insert that logo in. To do so, I'm going to go up to Insert Image. I'm going to choose Image. This dialog box comes up and it says, hey, do you want to place the image before the header? After the header? No, we want to place it inside, and we'll use the Nest button. Now I'm going to choose, make sure it goes to the right folder. It should. I'm going to choose the logo image, and there you go. See, it automatically adds the image right there and fits exactly to the height. Fits exactly. Now when you're looking at this, see the transparency? See how you can see the color from the header show through? Okay, so now the other thing I have to do, anytime I add an image, I have to add an alternate text to this. So if you have your properties panel open down here at the very bottom, I'm just going to go and change the alternate text. I'm just going to type in company logo. The alternate text is to help us describe the image at hand. So when you're thinking about it, not everybody can see those images when they're viewing your website. Could be a visual learner that cannot see certain parts. So what you want to do is go in and add the alternate text, and it'll help them out as much as possible. Okay, let's add some text to our header section. So in my code, I'm just going to add a little heading down here. I'm going to use the H1 tag. I'm going to type in hole1, and then notice how I have the H1 tag and close the H1 tag afterwards. Now you can also go in and use your properties panel to apply a heading 1 to your phrase as well. So there's a variety of different ways of doing it. Heading 1 is your main, that's your main heading. You have 6 levels of headings that you can work with: H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. And as you go down, the font size gets a little smaller, and typically when you work with a heading, it automatically is bold. Sometimes it'll go italicized. Now as we look at this, look where it places the heading. It doesn't place it to the right of the graphic. Now when you add a heading, it's what we call a block element. It adds space above and below the phrase. So it forces the heading to a new line. We don't want that. We want it to be side by side. So to do that, we need to modify our graphic. So we're going to add a style to my graphic up here, and we're going to force the text side by side. And the first thing I'm going to do is in my code for the img tag that I just added, I'm going to add what we call a class. So I'm going to say class equals, and then in quotation marks I'm going to give it a name. A unique name is fine, so I'm going to say format image. Now this uniquely identifies this image, so you can apply a specific format to just this image. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back to my designer, and I'm going to choose my external style sheet. I'm going to click on the selector, and I'm going to add a selector. Now I'm just going to keep it, so I'm going to say pound format image, so it applies it to all of the classes that I'm working with. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the float option. The float option, you can have 3 choices: left, right, and you can clear both basically, or clear. What this does is it forces anything to the right or below, it forces it up, and so it automatically creates what we call like a word wrap or text wrap if you are worked in some other design software. So in this case, I'm going to do a float left because I want the image to stay on the left side. So I'm going to say float left. See how that moves the text over? Now if I do a float right, look what happens. Where does the image go? It goes to the right side of my header. So the text, I'm going to keep it left, and notice how it moves it up. Now I'm going to add a little extra space between the text and the image, and I also want a little more space on the left side of the image as well. So I'm going to control the margin on the left side, so I'm going to go to the style here. I'm going to put in, let's do 30. See how it moves the image over from the left? And let's do 30 for the right side as well. Again, what you're doing here is you're adding space to that area that's to the left and right side of the images. You can also put one at the top and bottom, but we don't want to do it here because the image fits exactly to the height of our section. So there's no need to put any spacing above, above that. If you do, it's going to throw off your layout. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come back in my code here where the H1 is. I want to manipulate this text. I want to format this. I was able to get it up, and I wrapped it around using the float option for the image. And so now what I want to do is I want to format that to stand out. So with this external style sheet selected, I'm going to add a selector. Now what this does is this specifically identifies the heading 1 tag within the header section of your page. So if you have any other heading 1 tags used, if it's not in the header section, it's not going to be applied that same style. That's a great benefit of an external style sheet and working with divs. So I can have another heading 1 in my main section, and when I apply a style to that, it's only going to affect that area. So here it's kind of like you're narrowing down your selection, your style. And so I'm going to say pound wrapper, pound header, H1, and it only affects that area that I'm working with. Now I'm going to come up here and click on the text property. This will just scroll down for me, and I'm going to choose a color that fits with my color scheme. I'm going to do a darker green. So what I want to do here is, let me type this in, to B3411. See how that automatically goes in, changes the color of the text? Now the size is a little bit small, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the font size option here, and they give you options down here called extra small, larger. Don't use those. When you work with units, you really want to use either M or PX. So in this case, PM is usually used when you're doing web responsive design, so when you want to try to create a website that's good for mobile devices. But for right now, for learning, we're going to work with pixels. Now I can adjust this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with 100. You can see that it stands out, it's a lot larger, it fits exactly in that area that I'm looking for. Now I still think I might have to go modify the space in between the logo and the graphic and do some other things to it. That's fine, I can do that, and that's not a big issue because I just have to go in and manipulate the style. Now what I'm going to do here is, let's modify this text to stand out. Let's add a shadow to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 2-pixel shadow that goes for horizontal. Basically it's creating a duplicate of the text and it's offsetting it. So that's what it's doing, it's creating a duplicate of the text and offsetting. I'm going to choose a black color here. And as you can see here, can you see how the little black, it creates that little nice little black drop shadow around the text itself. When you work with text shadows, I usually like to have one in the main title area because it really helps draw attention to it for that purpose. Now let's go ahead, and what I want to do is I want to move this text over. So you can go in and apply text align center. You can center it, and it does move it over, so it moves over in the middle of the header section. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind. If you need to make other adjustments to that, you can also control it by adjusting the margin and margin on the left side, so you're forcing more space over here on the left area. So again, I'm just adding a graphic, I'm adding some text, I'm manipulating that. Now remember this, I think I forgot to mention, when I add a class to any of the elements, because I want to apply a format just to that element, when I'm applying the class, make sure you put a dot before the name. So that's why there's a dot down here where it says dot format image. When you have a hashtag or a pound sign, that's usually used for the ID attributes. When you work with class, you have a dot beforehand. Now, one of the things I might want to do here is I might want to move the text down some. Now I can do that by adding a little extra margin at the top of my heading. Sorry, not margin, I want to add padding at the top. Now all you're going to do is use the padding section. I'm just going to add, let's just experiment here. I'm going to do 25 at this time, not 250. So let me go back and, we'll do 20. And 20 moved it down nicely on that part. So what I'm doing is I'm forcing space up here at the top, and of course I don't want to do margin in that case because the margin will have an effect with the image that you have to the left and the graphic that's above it and so forth. So I'm just going to add padding here, and when you start working with padding and margins and and borders, that becomes those three elements styles become more essential when you start working with your layouts. So here I'm just adding a little padding to the top. Now could I add padding at the bottom? I could, but it really is not going to have any effect to what we were looking for. I'm trying to force it from the top down, so it's better to add the padding at the top. So here all I did was added my title. I went in and I modified it to be formatted a little bit differently, but you want to experiment here. You want to look at the other styles that you have listed here in the text section. You definitely want to choose a default font family. You want to take a look at some of these other aspects of this and see what you can come up to make the text stand out for that purpose.